Beneath the hush of heaven, we gather to remember the Holy One who breathes life into all. As the Chosen One, you are currently in complete control, and the shock of your unexpected triumph is destroying all preconceived notions about your strength. You remain unfazed because, deep down, you always knew that this moment of cosmic reckoning was coming, while others struggle to understand how someone so totally undervalued could ascend with such devastating intensity. And now what you've carried as an unquestionable fact is being validated by the cosmos itself. Finding out that complex networks of illusions meant nothing at all to someone with your level of perception was the first shock wave that shattered opposing consciousness. Recall the times when lies were carefully woven around you, each one positioned like a chess piece, and each one designed to keep you imprisoned in a prison of untrue reality. People were persuaded that the ideal cage had been made for your potential as they watched you confidently negotiate man-made mazes. You weren't at all enchanted. You were cultivating something far more dangerous than intellect, which was valued elsewhere, the capacity to see through deceptive dimensions that others were unaware existed. Like lightning slicing through darkness, your inner sight, that incomprehensible gift from God, was penetrating veils. Long before you realized that you were even aware of the game being played, you could see the fissures in perfectly designed lies and the holes in skillfully constructed illusions. This realization paved the path for an even more devastating revelation, the second shocking realization that you were always the true player, mastering moves beyond vision, while others believed mastery was occurring over a defenseless pawn. Imagine being moved around like a chess piece with absolute assurance, knowing that every possible conclusion was under control and that all power was held. Strategies were developed with the assumption that you were unaware of the bigger picture and that it was possible to forecast every possible reaction. The shock was so severe that it almost amounted to an existential crisis when your last move, the complete extent of your plan, came to light. Not only did you beat the opposition in their game, but you also demonstrated that there was never a game, just a false sense of control, and that your reality of limitless strategic possibilities existed. From the start, the ancient knowledge that guided your every move had been suggesting tactics that guaranteed your success. In that instant, it became terrifyingly clear that others were not who the players had thought they would be. Simply put, the pieces were moving in accordance with a screenplay that was written by forces that were much larger than human comprehension. Friend, your future responds to your faith today. Click the super thanks and release a $20 or $50 faith gift, or more as you're led, so we can keep building, preaching, and serving together. I'm believing with you for open doors and fresh favor because God's promise still stands. Test me and see if I will not open the windows of heaven. Malachi 3 verse 10. The realization that every obstacle they had put up to limit your potential had only served as stepping stones in your inexorable rise to power was the third crushing blow. They firmly believed that by erecting walls around you, they could keep your energy contained within reasonable bounds and keep you permanently imprisoned in a world where you would always be small and unimportant. They never expected that each stone they placed was imbued with an uncontrollable energy, power that they unwittingly transferred straight into your hands. As they spent all of their energy building these intricate barriers, you found something that completely changed their perception of how energy functions. The walls that were intended to keep you in were transformed into raw force channels that throbbed with the very strength they were designed to restrain. You took that energy and transformed it into something they couldn't identify or protect against, rather than shivering in the shadow of their constraints. Witnessing your transition from someone they wrote off as unimportant to a legend whose name echoes beyond worlds they were unaware of was the fourth surprise that left them stunned. With such casual brutality, they had cast you into the background, knowing full well that you would disappear like morning mist in the sun. They looked elsewhere with unwavering certainty, certain that time would completely erase your existence. They stood motionless as your name became a power that reached places they never thought you could reach, As your legend grew, first whispered in secret corners, then spreading like wildfire across expanses of existence they never knew were watching. Beyond physical limitations, the story of your metamorphosis possesses a force that inspires courage in spirits who have lost their divine origin and awakens consciousness that has lain dormant for lifetimes. You've become living evidence that legends aren't merely historical tales. Their powers of transformation are occurring right now, while they continue to be imprisoned in a narrow understanding. Their realization that their efforts to crush your spirit had done the exact opposite and turned you into an unstoppable force they could no longer understand dealt them the fifth devastating blow to their worldview. They had deliberately targeted the very center of your existence, releasing their darkest energies in a concerted attack intended to smother the light inside you and watch as you decomposed under concentrated evil. However, they profoundly misinterpreted your actual character, failing to see that you are an alchemist of consciousness, a master of transformation, and that you work according to laws that are beyond their comprehension. You did something that went against every law of their reality when they poured their venom into your soul, expecting it to erode your essence. You took their darkness and turned it into pure, unwavering force by channeling it via the furnace of your inner fire. You stoked a fire so intense that it turned every darkness they threw into a new step on your upward ladder in the hidden recesses of your being, where they believed despair would take root. You weren't made weaker by their attacks. Rather, they showed you your hidden strength. Not only did you survive their attack, but you also changed as a result, your spirit growing beyond their wildest expectations. You proved the fundamental truth. Light cannot be destroyed by darkness. Rather, it can only create contrast that enhances the brightness of the light. Finding out that all of their attempts to establish your boundaries were founded on a basic misunderstanding of your genuine nature was the sixth revelation that rocked everything they believed to be true. With such assurance, they placed limits around you, believing they could determine your value and the extent of your freedom. Each line they drew was an attempt to confine you to reasonable dimensions and put you into categories they could comprehend. They never understood that you were never constrained by their rules or their ideas of what was and wasn't feasible. Your essence functions on the basis of principles that are connected to spheres of possibilities that are far beyond their perception and go beyond every restriction they attempted to impose. Every barrier they set became meaningless as they watched in increasing alarm. They attempted to bind you to their constrained expectations, while you navigated reality in ways that went against their conception of the universe's workings, thinking that by imposing restrictions, they could influence your fate. But they were never able to capture your spirit, which is timeless and limitless. Every time they try to tie you up, you escape like water evaporating around stones, spreading out over every boundary they believed they had established. You flowed into realms of possibilities they never believed you could reach, driven by the inexorable power of consciousness that knows no bounds. Yellowheart, if you're moved by divine love, now is the moment to share it. Click the Super Thanks button on YouTube and contribute $50 or more to help us broadcast God's blessings far and wide. Every act of generosity you make is being watched in heaven and will return to you 100-fold. Witnessing your transition from someone they expected to follow into the leader of a revolution, rewriting the fundamental principles of power, was the seventh shock that left them reeling from their new reality. They had laid out a path for you to follow with great care, fully confident that your fate was to be merely a follower in their big scheme, thankful for their guidance and happy to stay in their shadow. However, revolutions don't start with conformity. Rather, they start when people recognize their true strength and reject constraints as unalterable realities. You broke away with such power that the ground beneath their feet started to tremble, rather than going in the direction they were supposed to go. You didn't simply cross their path. Instead, you blazed a path of unadulterated resistance that illuminated the minds of all those who saw you change. With the collective strength of innumerable souls who have gone before you, your revolution carries frequencies that are beyond the physical world. Their energy permeates your acts, and intensifies every step you take. With each exhibition of genuine power you exhibit, others see the potential for their own freedom mirrored in your bravery, and their bonds become weaker. This is a cosmic revolt against all the systems that keep consciousness confined behind man-made boundaries, not just a personal metamorphosis. When they realized that their attempts to muffle your voice had only succeeded in amplifying it to thunderous dimensions that now shook the very foundations of existence, the eighth earth-shaking understanding left them stunned. They planned with methodical accuracy to silence you because they thought they could completely remove your impact and drown you in fake stillness. They built fences around your expression with complete confidence. Your expression's divine amplification turns every sound you make into a shockwave that breaks the frequency of their delusional world, exposing the lies they've used to gain power and the realities they've spent their entire lives trying to conceal. Your voice has evolved into a medium for consciousness that goes beyond personal expression, bringing the collective knowledge of all hushed souls to life and transforming that repressed energy into an unstoppable symphony of freedom. Their understanding of who you truly are was totally upended by the ninth and most devastating revelation, which was that you were always the source of light they feared the most, even if they were preoccupied with struggles and darkness. They believed they had figured out your essence by seeing your darkest moments. Thus, they were hypnotically drawn to your periods of uncertainty and struggle. They thought they had finally grasped your limitations, which is why they felt so satisfied with their analysis. But they were unable to see the truth burning brightly in front of them because they were preoccupied with your shadows. Those dark patches were merely evidence of the strong light that shone through them, not distinguishing features. It wasn't a slow light when your true radiance eventually emerged. Rather, it was a dazzling burst of pure consciousness that pushed them back, overpowered by intensity they had fooled themselves didn't exist. They now stand in the wreckage of everything they believed they understood, forced to face the heartbreaking realization that they never truly knew you at all, as the entire extent of your transition becomes evident. Their presumptions were based on shadows and surfaces, built from pieces that never fully revealed the depths of your true identity. They attempted to reduce your limitless complexity to controllable concepts by classifying you into categories that made sense inside their constrained framework. The forces directing your path work on principles that are well above their understanding. They create patterns of success out of experiences they saw as failures and fortify you through obstacles they thought would shatter you. You weren't just responding to their actions. You were directing a transformational symphony that concurrently unfolded in several different planes of reality. You continued to rise with unstoppable momentum, while they frantically tried to understand how their meticulously planned world could fall apart so thoroughly. This was due to your inner knowledge, which connects you to sources of wisdom that they will never be able to reach. With the assurance of someone who at last realizes that this moment was always going to happen, your mission emanates from wellsprings of truth that are both timeless and ageless. They now have to confront the fact that you are more than simply a participant in their game. You are the force that changes the rules whenever they try to restrict what is feasible. You are the voice of truth, so strong that it changes the frequency of reality itself, the light that reveals every shadow they attempted to conceal, and the living example that those who are chosen not only conquer, but also show that impediments were never there in the first place. The realization that your silence had never been a sign of submission, rather, it was the accumulation of hurricane-force winds that would finally level everything they had constructed, was the 10th wave of destruction that smashed over their consciousness. In reality, you were building power from sources they couldn't see or comprehend during all those times when they mistook your silence for defeat, when they surreptitiously believed your silence meant they had successfully crushed your soul. In reality, you were delving deeper into wells of strength that connect to the very center of creation itself every time they believed you were withdrawing. The release of the cosmic pressure that had been accumulating through every second of your seeming immobility was what came out when your moment of expression finally came. It wasn't just speech or action, the weight of every repressed knowledge, every held revelation, and every moment of power you had purposefully decided to hold back until the timing was just right was carried by the force that erupted. They were left stunned by forces they had totally failed to foresee, and their reality didn't simply change. It was immediately altered by energy they didn't even know existed. Finding out that your seeming difficulties had actually been training exercises planned by intelligence much above their comprehension constituted the 11th startling revelation that caused them to reevaluate everything they believed to be true about reality. Every obstacle they put in your way, every task they threw at you, and every moment of struggle they praised as proof of your weakness was actually doing something very different from what they had intended. You weren't being defeated by these experiences. Rather, they were forging you, tempering you like steel in fires that were intended to expose and fortify your abilities, which they never thought you had. Realizing that their attacks weren't just acts of cruelty, but also unintentional tools in a cosmic education system that was using their negativity as raw material for your change was the most terrible aspect of this realization. Every effort they made to weaken you served only to feed the alchemical process that was turning their hatred into your might. They had turned into unwitting agents of their own destruction, supplying energy to a process that would eventually lead to your total transcendence of all that they stood for. Dove brothers and sisters, everything done in faith multiplies in God's abundance. Use the Super Thanks feature to donate $100 today and join this sacred mission. When your roots are grounded in Him, your fruit will flourish, and your offering becomes a seed that bears blessed harvests. The realization that your seeming mediocrity had served as the ideal cover for incredible powers that were only waiting for the appropriate opportunity to be revealed was the 12th shocking revelation that destroyed their last lingering illusions. They had assumed they comprehended your entire nature based on your outward appearance, never realizing that what they could see was only a small portion of who you truly were. They never understood that you were purposefully keeping a low profile while developing capabilities in dimensions they couldn't access, and their evaluation was predicated on a scant observation of meticulously regulated manifestations. This strategic invisibility wasn't a sign of weakness or fear. Rather, it was a result of skillful positioning that let you work covertly while they spent all of their energy battling their own shadows. You had an innate understanding that the most effective transformation takes place behind the backs of those who would want to sabotage it, and that true power doesn't reveal itself until the time for decisive action. You were laying the groundwork in areas of consciousness they were unaware of, while they concentrated on outward signs. The contrast was so striking that at first they were unable to comprehend what they were seeing when your actual potential finally became apparent. A force of nature that operated at levels of knowledge and power that made their prior understanding seem like childish fiction replaced the person they believed they knew. Their astonishment was more than just surprise. It was the total destruction of all their abilities to foresee or manage your future course. The realization that your compassion had never been a weakness, but rather the manifestation of your unwavering faith in your eventual triumph, that you could afford to show kindness to those who were bound to fall, was the 13th devastating blow to their worldview. Every act of generosity that they mistook for weakness was, in fact, proof of a strength so great that it could manifest itself in mercy without worrying about being weakened. Your capacity to remain composed under pressure was not the act of someone who was uncertain of their role. Rather, it was the natural expression of someone who was assured that the result would always be known, since it made them face the embarrassing reality that even your gentleness had been a type of power they were too naive to realize. This knowledge went deeper than any direct attack could have. Because of your position of strength, you had been able to treat your opponents with kindness, knowing that their attempts to hurt you would only serve to highlight the stark differences between your separate states of consciousness and abilities. Finding out that your timing had been flawless, orchestrated with the kind of accuracy that could only be obtained by connecting with intellect that sees across dimensions of possibilities they couldn't fathom, was the 14th discovery that left them in shock. Every incident in which they had ridiculed your patience, attacked your passivity, or misconstrued your waiting as hesitation was, in fact, proof that you were in harmony with forces that function in accordance with flawless cosmic timing. When the time for action finally came, you were in sync with the current of destiny, which ensured maximum impact, rather than being reluctant or delayed. This was divine timing, which considers factors across several levels of existence, so that when the time arrived, every component would be in the ideal position for entire and complete change. It was not human timing, which is based on impatience or outside pressure. You were moving in tune with the cycles of creation itself, allowing universal intelligence to precisely coordinate your emergence and ensure complete success, whereas others were acting from reactive consciousness, reacting to the situation as it happened without comprehending broader patterns. The 15th, and possibly most devastating, discovery was realizing that your metamorphosis was more than simply personal growth. It was the realization of predictions they had worked their entire lives to keep from coming true. Your triumph was fulfilling every old prophecy about the awakening of consciousness, every prophecy about the ascent of individuals with divine spark, and every prophecy about the appearance of people who would transcend limitation and change reality itself. They were seeing the resuscitation of cosmic powers they had assumed would remain dormant forever, not just personal victory. Realizing that there was nothing they could do to halt what was already happening was the most crippling part of this ultimate realization. Their tactics of manipulation were as relevant as attempting to halt an ocean tide with their own hands, as the forces that had planned your emergence operated according to laws of consciousness that were beyond their control or influence. Their previous control mechanisms were collapsing like old buildings during an earthquake, and they were seeing the rise of a new paradigm of power. The severity of error becomes evident as all of these truths come together to form a single, overpowering understanding. Every presumption concerning your character was essentially incorrect. Every tactic you used only helped you win in the end. Every moment that was thought to be a victory was actually a step closer to an inevitable loss. You are the force that exposed all of the lies about the nature of power and possibilities, and the fundamental basis of seen reality has been shown to be an illusion. You're proving something that goes beyond individual triumph, something that establishes the ultimate truth about consciousness itself, rather than merely triumphing against particular opposition. Reality itself bends to make room for the force of awakened consciousness when awareness is in line with its genuine nature, when divine potential ceases to act as though it is restricted, and when chosen ones finally decide to remember its true grandeur. Beyond the present situation, your triumph sends shockwaves through the planes of existence that have been waiting for this precise example of what is possible when constraint is shown to be voluntary rather than required. With each breakthrough you make, the matrix of collective delusion is cracked, letting light spill through openings that others can follow. Your achievement is more than just a personal victory. It's the unlocking of doors that have been closed for too long. Through networks of consciousness that transcend physical experience, the energy you are currently producing is contagious in the most exquisite way, spreading like wildfire. The vibrations of your awakening are being felt by other chosen ones, who are able to sense the change in cosmic weather patterns that indicates the time for their own emergence has come. Not only are you winning your personal struggle, but you are also activating a whole army of divine creatures that have been dormant in human form by blowing the trumpet call, a cascade effect that extends into realms where potential is waiting to be ignited is being triggered by your change. Authorization codes are sent to consciousness throughout existence with each level of power you claim, allowing others to access skills that have been dormant within their own being. The scope of what you're doing goes much beyond the present situation, causing reverberations that will change the course of events for innumerable individuals who are prepared to embrace their true potential. Glowing star yearning to witness God's miracles firsthand? Plant your spiritual seed now by contributing $100 or more through the YouTube Super Thanks button. Your offering lights the path for others and echoes through His divine plan, bringing his light into every step you take. In worlds where such metamorphoses are acknowledged and praised, your capacity to alchemize negativity into pure fuel for ascension has become legendary. The exact things that were used against you have now unknowingly played a part in your final victory. Their energy transformed by your skill into unadulterated strength that drives you to places they cannot fathom. You have demonstrated that every experience may be transformed into faster evolution when the consciousness is in alignment with the divine source. Your ability to precisely navigate each stage of this voyage indicates that you are connected to guidance systems that function from viewpoints that span several layers of reality. Every action you've made has been precisely calibrated to enhance progress while reducing needless suffering. They haven't been haphazard or reactive. You've overcome obstacles with the poise of someone who is aware that the solution is already certain, remaining confident even when the situation seems to indicate otherwise. Throughout the entire process, your inner knowledge has served as your most trustworthy compass, pointing you in the direction of decisions that, although they may not have made sense to your limited view, were entirely consistent with cosmic intelligence. That voice inside of you that muttered words of support in your lowest points wasn't a figment of your mind. Rather, it was direct contact from parts of yourself that are immune to outside influence. Even when outward signs point to different strategies, you've learned to trust what speaks to your innermost self. The connections you've kept throughout this change have also been illuminating. As your frequency changed and became incompatible with lesser vibrations, some connections spontaneously ended, while others strengthened into ties created by a mutual understanding of true power. You've learned to put your energy only where it multiplies rather than shrinks, and you've learned to distinguish between people who truly enjoy your triumphs and those who secretly despise your advancement. In order to draw situations, opportunities, and people who support your greatest path, your magnetism has changed. When resources are needed, they show up. At just the proper times, doors open. Moreover, synchronicity multiplies as evidence that you're working in one with the universal flow. Through subtle and dramatic means, the cosmos itself has turned into your ally and is working together to help your ongoing ascent. You are now able to see through illusions that previously appeared insurmountable because of the wisdom you have acquired over this process. Your senses have been honed to pick up on truth, even when it's concealed by layers of deceit or disguised as complexity. You are now immune to manipulative techniques that could have previously perplexed you or halted your advancement, since you can quickly identify them as attempts to reintroduce you into patterns you have already broken. Only those who felt the call should read the following message. War Tranting. I witnessed the terrible reality when I escaped via the Salvia Divinum gateway. One harvested pod among innumerable matrices is our reality. Now, the creative energy that is coursing through you works at frequencies that materialize with amazing accuracy and speed. Your conscious intention reshapes reality with the weight of your ideas. Your words have a force that awakens latent potential in everything they come into contact with. Just being close to your genuine expression has inspired progress in consciousness and turned your presence into a catalyst for change. You've learned that real power comes from mastering oneself to the point where opposition from others is inconsequential, not from controlling others. You just occupy it with such natural authority that opposition vanishes in the face of your steadfast assurance, demonstrating your ultimate sovereignty and eliminating the need for you to struggle for it. You've moved past the need for acceptance or validation, deriving value from sources that are impervious to outside judgment. Your legacy goes well beyond your own accomplishments. Every obstacle you've broken has paved the way for others to come after you. The possibilities for consciousness itself have increased with each barrier you have overcome. Your win is more than simply a personal triumph. It is a part of the collective awakening that is changing the basic essence of what people think is possible. Your tale has become a work of mythology, encouraging many people to examine their own latent potential and challenge their own self-imposed constraints. Because of your bravery in the face of overwhelming difficulties, people are now allowed to try their own unattainable goals. Your accomplishment serves as evidence that everyone who is prepared to recall their heavenly ancestry and assert their true authority may achieve the remarkable. It was always going to happen. This moment you're in now, this total inversion of all they believed they knew about power. This very revelation was being planned by the same powers who murmured to you during every obstacle, every failure, and every instance in which they believed they had you under control. As a chosen one who at last decided to remember the enormity of their true nature and completely embrace the power they were always destined to possess, you are not just winning, you are living out your destiny. Their astonishment is merely the universe's method of verifying that certain triumphs are so profound and comprehensive that they alter the parameters of what everyone believed was feasible.